Hello everyone, and today I will share my flip through from our 1 month trip to Egypt, the land of treasures and antiquities. This trip was for one entire month, and there was a lot to log in my journal. Along with that, I will share the 7 travel journal guidelines that I personally found quite helpful before, during, and after the trip. The first guideline that I applied was reading about my trip and the places we were planning to visit. And the purpose of that is to set the theme of the entire journal setup. And that will be applied in the second guideline, which is create your setup and select your journal kit. So in that particular example, after briefly reading about the historical sites we were planning to visit, it didn't take long to specify the era and the mood, which took me back as if I am an archaeologist in the middle of the excavation sites. There is a lot of sand and digging, a dusty side with a lot of discoveries. So for that I picked my journal to be brown, not any other color, and preferably to include pockets in the front and the back, which turns to be quite helpful as well to store all the tickets or extra pictures. And in the back there was a long pocket as well. As you can see, the color theme is brown and yellow, reflecting the dusty and sandy environment. And the setup was composed of 3 items. The first was this yellow color zipper pouch with plenty of space to store papers, 3 pockets here, and in the back it was a complete zipper pouch for more storage. I did attach a vintage trip checklist to it, and I added, of course, journal at the end. The second component in my setup was the secretarial craft envelope, which hosted most of the travel plans. I later on added the boarding passes. I used all the travel stationery vintage, and I found it quite helpful to add the writing board in it because it allowed an easy access for it. And I picked this one from the older editions of Traveler's Company because it kind of reflected the early 1900s era where most of the discoveries were made. And the last component in my journal setup was the insert, and for that I picked the 014 from Traveler's Company craft blank pages. And this decision was driven because of the color of the pages. The third guideline is related to pre-decorating your spread. So I kind of imagine that we will be very busy over there, and I won't have the time to pre-decorate and decorate properly my spreads. So I took the liberty to do that before the trip. I decorated the cover with some vintage travel stickers. I also found it useful, if you can see, I found that sticker book in Amazon with a lot of nice stickers that helped a lot building my spreads. And if you don't find that, you can always use your stamps or washi tapes. I also pre-decorated the entire page by staining them with this brown color, again to give the impression of the dust coming from those sites. As we go with the flip through, I will only comment about few spreads if I applied certain technique, or if it was a special, maybe a fun historical fact. Beginning with that page, I added the picture from a postal card of the seal that they found on the Tutankhamun tomb, and I added a wax seal. I thought this will give the impression we are about to reveal the wonders of Egypt. And this is how I decorated the first page, having a painting for Napoleon visiting the pyramids. The third, or actually the fourth tip is to collect local items from there, tickets from the sites you visit, and also maybe small souvenirs from the little shops they have there, and that will add a local touch to your travel journal. Over here I have this papyrus with the hieroglyphic alphabet, which means sacred writings. They used this language when they write on the walls of the temples. And here where the adventure begins, with a map and a picture of me and my husband from the courtyard of one of the temples. Very well. Another example of adding a local touch is I added to this spread this statement in Arabic, and despite Egypt is not an Arabic country, however they do speak Arabic as the formal language since the 800s, and their slang is a mixture of Arabic and Coptic. But back to this statement, I found it very interesting because it was said by an Egyptian novelist who was awarded the Nobel Prize, and he said that Egypt is not a historical country. Egypt came first, then history. I found that very interesting to add in my journal. Moving on to tip number 5 is writing in your journal. So I was one of those people that I was wondering what to write in my journal, and then when I give it a thought, I realized that traveling is about making beautiful, happy memories, and also about exploring and learning. So I decided to, for sure, I need to add those moments where I reflected, and every time I go back I remember that moment. But I also wanted to log here and there some exotic fun facts from the things we learned over there. And if it gets more than this, I actually found it too overwhelming to write everything. So I added more information in a letter, and I printed it. I put it in an envelope and I kept it here because I didn't want my journal to be like an essay. So this is a spread where I also added a favorite part of the trip. It's very helpful to pick a color theme for your spread. It makes it easier. And this is the name of the second city we visited in Upper Egypt, Aswan. You probably know that Egypt is the only country that has a science named after it, Egyptology, and there is hundreds and thousands of books and encyclopedias about Egypt, and that spread was inspired from this fact. More from our memories with the very nice, welcoming local temple guards. And that spread was also very special to me because it reminded me with this fantastic Nile dinner we had on that sailing boat. The sky shades over there varied from dark fiery red to light purple. And of course pictures don't do justice, but nevertheless looking at this and logging that best moment brought that happy memory back to me. And as you can see also that the sites in Upper Egypt where all the temples are were an inspiration for many Orientalist painters that came from Europe to capture that fascinating site. More from visiting the countryside, the Nubian village. People allow you to have a tour in their house, very hospitable. And over here I have a spread dedicated for one of the examples of the fun facts, where I realized that that is a painting for a particular temple in Fayale Temple, and it was by David Roberts, 1838. That's the same pictures from the 60s where it was completely flooded. Even Egypt had a different flag back then. And finally now this is the current construction when they moved it stone by stone to another island and protected it from flooding. So I thought that is the same site but from different eras. And this is more memories for me with that statue. And by the way, that particular statue was a famous item in many fairy tales because the Greek geographers claimed that it used to whistle at night. And over here is another example of historical facts, and I dedicated that spread for Howard Carter. And he's an English archaeologist and Egyptologist that discovered the intact tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. That is his house, and on the west bank of the Nile, and our hotel was on the east bank, overseeing this site. He's definitely a highlight personality when it comes to Egyptian discoveries. More of the sites that we visited, and this is the Luxor Temple, and the fun fact about that is that this place hosted 4 different religions over time, from ancient Egyptian to pagan Rome, early Christian, that's their shrine. Early Christians painted colored paintings for the apostles, and finally a medieval mosque. So really and truly, when you visit Egypt, you feel like you went on that time machine and you've been transported through history and through different empires. The following tip is about pictures. So remember, your travel journal is not a photo album. There is a place for that, hard copy or digitally in your computer. However, you need to pick the pictures that represent that happy moment or that exotic site or your favorite place, because you can imagine with such a very rich, culturally rich country, we had so many pictures from camera and phone, but I only picked the ones that represented that moment. So along with the comments, every time I read the journal, it brings back all those beautiful memories. I found it also helpful when I cut the picture, if it's possible, and make it look like a sticker. It gives it a nice dimension. I dedicated that spread for Agatha Christie because we were staying in the Sofitel legend of Old Cataract, and that place was built by Thomas Cook in the 1899. So many celebrities visited that place, Churchill, Princess Diana, and Agatha Christie particularly with that view. She wrote most of portions of her Death on the Nile novel. So again, that place was amazing. More memories. I dedicated that spread for the tomb of Tutankhamun, and this is our picture with our very knowledgeable guide and the local guard of the temple. I also added a picture for Mr. Carter examining his discovery, and every time we talk about that particular discovery, I want to add any seal, because that seal was the indication that this tomb was intact. Another moment of special moment for me at the entrance of one of the tombs in the Valley of Kings. We did find inside that place Greek inscriptions written by 2 fugitive monks running from persecution in Rome. And again, Egypt is just a mirror for so many different empires. And this, more memories. Again, I picked the pictures that represented that moment where I wanted to reflect on. For example, that location over here surrounded by the cliff and the hills. There was a lot of peacefulness and serenity in that place, and those cliffs hosted so many pigeons as well. I changed the size of the picture over here, logging the memories from inside that temple. And again, I applied the technique of cutting the picture like a sticker. And this is us at the entrance of the temple. So obviously we went in December, last December, and because of the pandemic we had the place for ourselves. So, and that's us in front of the iconic landmark of Abu Simbel temples. Look how the size, our size compared to the statues, and it's just fascinating, that site. And usually it's very crowded and especially twice a year in October and February, where the sun illuminates the face of the king twice a year, the day of his birth and the day of his coronation. So I moved back to the city. We visited that palace founded by the Belgian baron, the medieval citadel, and more of the memories. Well, obviously, that's another example where you collect the souvenirs from local. We went to this site to do safari and explore the World Heritage Site of the Valley of Wales. So basically you walk in desert and you see fossils of whales. And this is with our guide and his Land Cruiser. I did collect 2 seashells from the desert. It was allowed because they have so many. And this is a ticket with the details of the trip and distance from home, travel time, and so on. And then we visited that very exotic little town where they do a lot of pottery. And this place is very special because it was basically founded by a lady who came from Switzerland and taught the entire local community to do pottery until it became a very famous touristic attraction. And you can see that the color theme here changed, the countryside, the greenery. I did some doodling inspired from their beautiful designs of pots and dishes. And the last thing is, of course, the great Giza pyramids, and we had lunch over there overlooking this fascinating view. The last tip I have, the before last tip I have, is the dedicated spread for your travel itinerary, and I like to make it vintage, and this is basically a summary of the journey. And I also will recommend to dedicate a ticket where you only list the names of the places you visit, just the name, no details, because this way you will remember exactly where you went, and again, so you don't forget about one of the locations. And more of decorated spreads, and that's it. And I was happy that I managed to add everything for the entire month in one insert. You can always keep your backup, of course. So that was from the Travel Journal of Egypt. The very last tip I have is that you don't need to worry about having your journal perfect. Just be present, enjoy the trip, and then log those beautiful memories so you can have them recalled anytime you need. So if you have any questions regarding the techniques or the stationery I used, or if you have more tips for travel journaling, please share in the comments. I'll be very happy. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Happy journaling.